no matter what you feel about those previous moves, whether you agree with them, thought they were justified, not justified, no matter what, most people didn't see the time while Philando Castile took his last breath on camera. We weren't there for the shot. Mike Brown's wasn't there. There were so many questions about Mike Brown's. Come to find out, the people who said hands up, don't shoot, one of them lied, the other one said, well, I just said it because he said it. Then the other people were like, well, hands up, don't shoot. I thought the first set of shots took place in the car. And then you had you go back to Trayvon. Well, he could do this. The arguments of that ensue when you're not an eyewitness from everything that you need to see to determine whether or not it's a right or wrong. And with this one, man, I mean, and to me, I think the only one that I'm like, why are we not up on our, that's truly comparable is Eric Garner. Like, as a cop, I don't understand. I had to have been in the grand jury room to understand how they didn't follow through with charges. Mind you, grand jury is made up of random people. It's made up of a room of New Yorkers. And so I don't know what happened there, because any police department is trained to put an arm around someone's neck unless it's a deadly force situation. Mm-hmm. But so to me, if any one of them is comparable, it's that one.
Yeah.
But other than that, I see why they're saying it's different.
Not to interrupt you, so that the hold for Eric Garner, the hold that the cop had him in, that's you're kind of trained not to ever do that unless it's like
a deadly force situation, not even a sleeper hold, man.
So is there
be a deadly force situation?
Okay, so I'm really ignorant about it. Is there a difference between like a sleeper hold and the hold he was doing? Like, I just, when I see somebody put their arm around somebody's neck, I just think, oh, that's a sleeper hold or whatever it may be.
Yeah, well, see, sleeper hold is designed to put pressure on the carotid artery, and that's what makes you pass out.
Okay.
A choke hold is designed to put pressure on the larynx, and that's what makes you not be able to breathe.
Gotcha. Okay.
But if you don't know what you're doing, or in the height of a moment of a situation, you can easily do one while you're trying to do the other. So that's why you just stay away from it.
Gotcha.
Jay, do you feel like I feel this time that more police officers are actually speaking out, whether individually on social media or, heads of departments, like the Chattanooga chief of police the other day came out and said, if you as an officer feel like what happened to George is okay, you need to turn in your badge. Like, do you feel that is different at all, or is that just something we've never seen publicized before?
Little both, actually. Because what has happened is the people who feel that way have said it in the internal statement, within the walls, and they didn't do it within the walls because they were ashamed to do it outside the walls. Police officers, by training and by experience, we look at the law differently from everyone else. Not to say better, but we have a little bit more of an insight. We put a lot of emphasis on what you don't see, because we understand there's a certain standard of the Supreme Court that says the totality of the circumstances. So a lot of times as citizens and civilians, we look at something, we see these circumstances. We're not taking in the totality of them. So because we're ingrained in that, we understand the value of what we don't know and how that can change the situation left or right, up or down in any direction. Again, going back to what I said about the last question, this one, we pretty much had the totality of circumstances enough to say, okay, no matter what you say, this is not okay. There's no contradictory evidence you could produce. The other one, you could raise the other ones, even if you still was like, you could still raise some questions of doubt and argument. This one, you cannot possibly raise a question of doubt. So that's why it's like, okay, we can argue about all these other ones all day long, but this is not okay. Not okay. And then what makes it even more not okay was the manner in which it was done. It was done in not only unprofessional, but that's why a third degree murder is probably the most appropriate charge if you read the statute, because it was a depraved indifference to that man's life. Even after he was lifeless, and when you take someone into custody, and I say this all the time, that person, and I said this at the awakening, they become your baby. You are responsible for that well-being the minute you say you're under arrest. So even regardless of everything else, out of your responsibility to have care for the person that you're supposed to be arresting, when you feel that person go lifeless, even if it didn't kick in before they went lifeless, I might kill this person. which it should have kicked in before there, but even if it didn't, you're supposed to, when you feel them go lifeless, you have, even if you're not human enough to do it, you took an oath to make sure that they're okay.
Right.
And the lack to even do that, to just look at the man, was a depraved indifference to whether or not he lived or died.
Now, is third degree higher than first? I mean, which one's high? Like the higher, which one's higher? First?
Yeah, first, second are higher. The thing is that first, every state has different statutes. And so murder is a state statute. Everybody has, some places, many states don't even have a 30. You know, it just goes immediately into manslaughter. Everybody's hierarchy and everything is all set up differently. But when you read the statute out there from Minnesota, third degree is the most appropriate charge because that's what actually happened. They also did manslaughter, just in case they can't get that, so they'll have something. But it's the most appropriate, mostly because while we all may feel first and second degree is what he deserved in the court of moral code, he's not going to go to court of moral code, he's going to court of law. And we always have to remember that in the court of law, the burden of proof is on the prosecution. Right. It's not on his burden to prove that he didn't mean to kill him. It's on the burden of the state. And when you look at first degree and second degree, that has a lot to do with criminal intent. Remember that show, Law and Order, Criminal Intent? Yeah. Okay, the easiest way to determine criminal intent is to read someone's mind. Since we can't do that, we have to find other ways. And if you can produce evidence to that person's intent, by all means, make the charge. But if you cannot produce evidence to that intent, then you won't be able to prove it. So they went to the one that they can to prove. We can visually see that he had an indifference to his life. The other things, while they may be true, we can't prove. They can't. It'd be very difficult to prove, and that's why that is why, in many cases, I know we wanted an arrest. Make an arrest. It's taking so long. That's why they took the arrest so long to make. You didn't want to do what happened with the Rodney King officers all over again. If you remember the Rodney King officers, you know, they got found not guilty at first time around. When the federal trial came around, the feds did a deeper investigation. The key thing that happened in that situation was they ran those computers in the car, the mobile terminals. They ran those, the history of those, and they found out that night when they went out for duty, one of the officers said, "Yeah, let's go kick some cans tonight." And you know, cans, Mexicans, Africans, they said, "Let's go kick some cans tonight." Well, that is evidence of your intention to harm people. Gotcha. So, and you back it up to this case, Mr. Floyd, rest his soul, Mr. Floyd. What you want to do is you want to take time to check his cell phone text messages, check his emails. You want to take time to search his computer history. You want to take time to see what kind of internet site he subscribes to. See what kind of interest groups that he's having money going on his credit cards, automatic pay to. You want to interview his neighbors, interview his friends, you want to take time to sift through those things thoroughly because you don't want evidence of intentionality to be out there and you missed it because you wanted to satisfy the public's fast arrest. Gotcha.
So you got to do all those things. So that's, you know, when people are like, "I need an arrest right away," it's not that simple.
That may not be the best thing.
All right.
You wanna what you'd rather have is a thorough investigation leading to a strong court case than a hasty arrest to satisfy people in a sloppy court case and go back out in the streets.
What in your opinion, what's going to happen with this one? You think there's going to be a conviction?
Yeah, there's going to be a conviction of some kind. We have to remember. First thing that has to happen is, so these charges that they're bringing against them have to be taken before the grand jury. We have to hope is not stupid. So the grand jury is going to be made up of a bunch of folks from that county. They have to say, okay, you have probable cause to take this to court. And then when they take it to court, they're going to have to try to prove those elements. I think they have a good, strong case to prove those elements. We have to be careful about getting upset at the things we hear. The district attorney was honest when he said there's some evidence that proves it might not have been intentional. Everybody went up in one way. He said that in the press kind of like, what? And what he went back and cleaned it up, and I hope people will look at how he went back and cleaned up that statement. What he's saying is basically he's kind of talking about exculpatory evidence, meaning we know we have a good case, but in order to properly present this case to court, you also have to examine any evidence or any evidentiary theories that support his innocence as well.
What can you say what type of evidence that was again?
I don't know what it was. So what I'm about to say is pure exculpatory.
Okay.
So what you have to do, and especially in the police have to do this to the defense. If you've come across something that might be a valid defense or possible evidence of innocence, even if it doesn't change the situation, you have to give that to the defense. You can't keep it in your pocket. Like, you can't go to a store and let's say I rob a store and they interview me. I rob a store and I'm running out, and and they interview Marvin, and Marvin says, "Yeah, he ran out. That was him. He had on the red hat, some headphones." And they interview you. You say, "Yep, that was him. Had on the red hats." And they're like, "Man, we got the guy. I got some people said it." And then they interview William. William says, "Man, person ran out. He had on a purple shirt." But they can't be like, "Well, we got two people that say red shirt, so we got the right one." You can't do that. You have to examine evidence that might point to my innocence as well.
Good, man. Like, I didn't know any of that, and I think that's important for the viewers that are going to watch this to understand that, because I think everybody, including myself, is just like, why did it take so long for him to get arrested or or charged? You know what I mean? Like, we wanted swift, immediate gratification. Yeah, we want us to happen right away.
That's totally understandable. But the difference between us now, I think we have the right energy now, as far as what it takes to overthrow this oppressive system. Now we have to get the weapons that the old school folks had.
Right.
And that's up here. And a lot of the old school folks that been coming out, they didn't just march back in the King days. They knew the law. Like, they knew the statutes. They knew not just what the General Assembly put in the law, but they knew the court cases that changed the law and how it was interpreted and what the legal update was. They had pamphlets, they studied, they went to weekly trainings even when there was no march. So when they got out there in the street, they were armed. That's why they were so disciplined. Mm-hmm. And so I think right now we have the right energy, but we've got to, because we won't be so reactionary to everything if we understand what's being said. Mm-hmm. And we can channel our energy to the right places collectively. So when somebody says third degree, oh my God, third degree, that's too, well, you know what third degree says and why. Right. If we know that, then we won't waste energy being mad at that, and we can turn our energy to the things that we need to turn to. Mm-hmm.
Right. It's just like you said, man, it's got to be that charge. We're looking for a conviction, and it's got to be something, we can prove, beyond a reasonable doubt. And I'm glad, just like Marvin, man, I'm glad you said that. Most folks don't even know that. Like, I didn't have a clue, and it just makes sense now when folks get, these things have happened in the past, and folks get, they always bring up, well, this kid so-and-so had been in trouble before, and so it makes perfect sense with your explanation now, why that, why they do that, and specifically why these folks beat these cases, man.
Yeah. And one of the major differences, like somebody brought up a very valid question, well, if Ray killed Pookie, or if I harm Marvin, God forbid, if I harm Marvin, I'd be in jail right away. But one of the differences is I had no business having my hands on Marvin. So I put my knee on Marvin and choked him out. I had no business touching Marvin. In fact, as soon as my knee came in contact with his neck, that was an assault right there. And everything after that is automatically illegal. We just see how illegal it is. When you have an officer taking someone into custody, you have someone who initially had a legal right to have their hands on them, who had a legal right to use force. So now you have to examine when it became illegal.
Gotcha.
Before you say it's just wrong altogether. So that's sometimes that by itself in its nature is what takes a while.
Same thing there. That's a good explanation, man, because I was victim of that too. I literally last night, I gave the example of, can you imagine, let's say sometimes you see cops will drive through the intersection. They'll turn their lights on, they'll drive through an intersection, and then they turn the lights off and they're just coasting, just driving normally again. And you're looking like, what the hell? Like, I've seen that on a couple of occasions. Like, he didn't want to wait. He just wanted to go through the intersection, right? That's just me, my ignorance or whatever. I don't know what he's doing, but I'm like, he just literally just didn't want to wait. So what if some citizens decided, we're going to stop that cop, we're going to follow him, we're going to stop him, we're going to make a citizen's arrest. because he could have put people's lives in danger at that intersection, right? And then people come out, they drag the cop out, and then you would have saw a citizen put their knee on that cop's neck. I asked the question, do you think that that person would have been given 4 days of freedom, you know, after killing a cop? And everybody's like, oh, hell no, absolutely not, absolutely not. You know, so I'm glad you made that distinction because I never thought about that. There's no need for me to have my hands on Chance or William ever, right? Because that's battery off top.
Off top.
But for an officer who's given that, I guess, by law, given that authority, you have to figure out, okay, was it okay for them to have their hands on that person?
Right, because it started out as a legal arrest, from my understanding.
Right.
It started out as a legal arrest. So the investigation is, what point did it turn illegal? Before, you understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And so that's, you got to really, and we're just talking about it off the cuff, but the layers upon layers of law and legal precedents that you have to sit through to get something close to clarity on that is a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, anything less than 2 weeks is a rush, to be honest with you.
Yeah.